hello, this is EJK. This is going to be an analysis between Maru and Myungsik. This is a Pro League game played from the finals of like the first season of Pro League between SKT and Jin Air, and this is going to include a lot of spoilers so that I can explain different points about the game more clearly. So if you don't want to have the spoilers of what the players do, then um, don't watch this. Myungsik is a very interesting player. I just want to put that out there. He tries to do his own style in TvP, and we see this reflected in the build that he goes for in this game against Maru. What he ends up doing is a 3-base Blink-Stalker +1 Adept timing attack on Maru's 3rd base, and he follows that up with a massive amount of Warp Prisms. He made about 5 or 6 Warp Prisms this game and only 1 Immortal in comparison. So he really used his robotics facility production to be very aggressive with his Warp Prisms and continuously making them. Maru, on the other hand, he has a really nice build on this map. He goes for a fairly fast 3rd command center, and he plays very defensively in the first stages of this game, setting himself up so that he isn't very far behind in the mid to later stages of the game. So what this SCV is scouting here, so it's important to know that Maru has very specific scouting timings and makes important reads based off of this information. So, for example, the SCV here, it's paused at Myungsik's base. So if there was an aggressive thing going on from our Protoss player here, there would be a chrono boost on the gateway and or the nexus. Right now, since there isn't a chrono boost on the gateway, we know that Myungsik isn't necessarily going for a very fast aggressive attack because you need the adepts in contrast with the mothership core in order to be able to put down the pylons and do a pylon overcharge rush. Speaking of which, Maru has decided not to put his barracks at the wall just for the pylon overcharge. He is okay with sacking both of these depots and or building a bunker over here for defense, and he'd rather not lose the reactor on his barracks and lose 50%, or is that 100%? Because you go from 2 Marines to 1. Yeah, I think it's 100%. So he'd rather not lose his, he'd not rather not take 100% production cut to his production against a pylon overcharge. Another thing to note here is that Maru went for a Reaper scout. He just scouted this area of the map for proxies, and his SCV is going to go back and scout on this area of the map for proxies, I believe. Or wait, my mistake. That is the Reaper actually scouting for the proxies. The SCV is heading back on the mini map. So let's examine what Maru knows and why it's okay to take this 3rd command center. So he knows that Myungsik didn't invest his chrono boost energy early game into many adepts and to go for a mothership core attack. He also knows that Myungsik went for a pretty standard nexus timing as well, and he didn't skip any, he didn't like cut an adept or cut a mothership core or anything to add a really fast proxy Stargate. Maru scouted for all the proxy shenanigans in the locations that it could potentially be, and he didn't see any, and so now he's putting down the 3rd command center in a fairly safe manner because he knows what Myungsik is doing. And I like Maru's build too. because he doesn't go for a star port very fast. You're not rushing it out to do a Liberator harass or to do some sort of Widowmine harass or anything like that. He's just making it for the Cyclone. And another important thing to know about Maru's build is that if we look at the minimap, only 1 out of the 4 gases available to him have been taken. So he's affording all of this on only 1 gas, which I really like. So he's making this Cyclone on 1 gas. That's a very significant thing to note because Cyclones are 150 gas. So he had to cut the starport to be able to afford the Cyclone this early on. However, that allows him to add these 2 extra barracks fairly fast, and he has a very good mineral income right now because of the... So if we take a look at the worker count, ignoring mules for a second, Maru has 3 SCVs in gas, so he has a total of 28 SCVs mining minerals, minus the 3 that are building things. So, or just 2 because the orbital's done. So he has a total of 31 minus 5, 26 workers mining minerals, whereas Myungsik has 6 probes in gas, and so he has 33 workers mining minerals. Myungsik is investing twice as much into gas output with his workers than Maru is. That's pretty much what my whole point was. I guess I kind of felt like I rambled on there. But economy, I really enjoy how the Legacy of the Void economy works, and I feel that it's important to point these things out so that you guys can also understand how the economy works, and so that how you can streamline your economy during your games so that you can have the most units at the fastest possible time. Maru still has not built his Stargate or Starport yet, and since he is so gas starved, he cannot afford the Marauders, which cost 25 gas a piece. So that's why he is doing only Marine production right now, and he's saving gas to get the Starport and the +1 started as well. And we see these missile turrets going down, kind of preemptive missile turrets, but if we think about what Maru is trying to do, he has an early 3rd command center, so he obviously wants to establish that in the safest way possible, as has been reflected in all of his decisions this game thus far. So we see that there is a bunker right here next to this gas, and he's starting 2 turrets as well. So he's essentially bunkering up and starting to create static defense structures that will help zone out a warp prism harass, so that Myungsik doesn't sneak in some adepts and then Maru loses a bunch of workers. Because Maru, if we remember, he doesn't have the very fast starport, so he's not going to have a Liberator to chase down the Warp Prism, and he only has 1 Cyclone and a handful of Marines. And these Marines, they don't have Combat Shield and they don't have Stim, so they're going to be 2-shot very easily against a dedicated adept pressure with a Warp Prism. So this defense is very necessary. Also, because Maru did scan, and I can actually go back and point that out. So well, first his Reaper Sack. I downloaded the VOD so I could do this. His Reaper Sack ended up scouting the... Yeah, so the Reaper Sack here ends up scouting just the robotics facility being put down, and it's a fairly late one as well, because Maru didn't immediately go into Myungsik's base. He went around the entire map and scouted for... went around most of the map and scouted for proxies, right? So this robotics facility isn't a very fast robotics facility. It should have been done by now, but it's being almost done. So Maru knows that there is some other tech building that has been placed down already based on this scouting information. But since Myungsik's investing in a double tech, we know that it's not going to be an all-in, because he wouldn't have enough resources to invest in so much tech and to have a big army at the same time. So then Maru ends up scanning right here, and what he sees is a forge going down fairly late, and he sees the robotics facility. He doesn't see anything else, but at the same time, he doesn't really need to see anything else either. Because he sees the relatively late forage, he knows that Myungsik isn't going for a very big gateway all-in with 0-0 upgrades, and the only other option Myungsik has is either, I think, a DT drop, because Maru has not seen what Myungsik's army is. He doesn't know that Myungsik has 3 stalkers, or it's a fast third, which in this case is what Myungsik is doing. And I also forgot to mention really briefly at the beginning of, or towards the beginning, that Myungsik didn't know what Maru was doing because he got the Twilight Council before the robotics facilities, so his observer is going to be a lot slower in going across the map and scouting Maru's base. So Myungsik was forced to add on a second and third gateway before taking his third base, compared to Maru taking a very fast third base before his extra production was going on. So Maru, not only did he have kind of a +1 from his fast third CC, but he also had another slightly small, very small advantage, but still an advantage nonetheless that can be used to capitalize on other areas of the game by Myungsik going for that delayed third nexus. Alright, so the turrets are going back down. Starport started. We're back to where we were before we ended up rewinding a little bit. And at this stage of the game, Maru just wants to expand and take his third very safely. Right now, he's still not looking to do any kind of pressure. I think it's a common misconception that Terran players have, and I struggle with this too, from playing Bio for so long in Heart of the Swarm, that Bio has a timer. Bio does not have a timer against Blinkstalker / Adepts. And by that, I mean, as the game goes on, Bio only gets stronger against Blinkstalker Adept unit compositions. Whereas in Heart of the Swarm, Protoss players were adding on lots of Colossi and lots of Templar, going for very big Deathball armies, which were much stronger than the Bio armies. So Bio did have a timer back in Heart of the Swarm. And I think a pretty big mistake is that Bio players will Bio players will feel the need to pressure right now, and it's just not, you don't need to do that. And we see Maru in this game taking his time, setting himself up, making sure he doesn't have any loose ends before actually moving out of the map. So right now, Maru has not moved out on the map just yet. He doesn't know anything that's happening. And he went for the first 2 medevacs so that he can heal his units, obviously. And now his second units coming out of his starport are 2 Liberators. So he's not looking to be aggressive anytime soon. He's still continuing to turtle up. And we see his combat shields are still relatively late. He did not rush them out either. So he's not really going to be looking to be wanting to be aggressive until his combat shields are at least done. Maru scans over here. He doesn't see any army, but more importantly, he doesn't see any gas from Myungsik. And as I mentioned briefly earlier, Myungsik is going for a 3-base timing attack. He has 59 workers. He's cut probes so that he doesn't saturate his third base with his gases. And very interestingly, Myungsik ended up researching Blink over the Adept upgrade. We see that on the production tab right now. So this attack wasn't, I don't think this attack was meant to kill Maru. It was just meant to apply a lot of pressure with the combination of Blinkstalkers and Adepts with +1 attack to tank for the Blinkstalkers when they're doing the damage. And Maru immediately sees this. He's like, no. Well, first he scans because he knows that for Myungsik to go in blindly like that, he knows that there's going to be some sort of observer there. So good pickoff from him. And then he immediately sacks his third, because in this position, Myungsik only has +1 attack, Maru has +1 attack too. Myungsik does not have his 5th and 6th gas though, so both players are still only on 4 gases, and Maru has been teching up, whereas Myungsik is staying on relatively low gateway tech. We see the second Warp Prism coming down from Myungsik. He's looking to be very aggressive throughout this stage of the game. And Maru just, he's okay. Like, he's in an okay position still. It was very good decision, good reaction to lift up his third base, evacuate as much stuff as possible, and then to reestablish his third base as soon as Myungsik moved back. Although I feel like Myungsik could have stuck around for a little bit and tried to force field out Maru from taking his third base. Good placement from Maru, being able to kill that Warp Prism very fast, but Myungsik already has another Warp Prism in the bottom right-hand corner, ready to attack on the other side of the map, and he's making a third Warp Prism already. So I mentioned earlier that Myungsik had a very unique style, and he is showing that by this massive amounts of Warp Prism / Adept-Stalker, which end up doing not as much damage as you'd expect because Maru invested a lot in missile turrets, and he has that single bunker, and he was already at home when Myungsik kept attacking, so Maru was never out of position, so that these Adept drops would do a lot of damage. Now though, Maru is pushing out. He only wanted to push out and kind of that, like, what he just did there is a pretty high level move, and essentially you know that your opponent's army is not necessarily over in this area. You have no intention of going past that area as well. You're simply there to basically flex your muscles and say, hey, I'm potentially moving out, and like Myungsik, most likely a Protoss player has an observer or some sort of spotter to see that army move out. So they're going to start to panic when they see the army move out and start to become more defensive as a result. So this second Warp Prism ends up not doing too much damage. Maru has a pretty cool wall off, not on the high ground, but on the low ground of the natural. And this Warp Prism harass ends up getting taken out relatively easily, and we see this third Warp Prism all ready to go, and I believe Myungsik's going to be making another Warp Prism relatively soon. He's also taking his 4th base now as well, and Maru smartly scans this, and he confirms that there is a 4th base. The same thing could have also been accomplished by having a Marine over there as well. So what this tells Maru is that he can now move out and push on the map. There would really be no reason to do this kind of a move out if your opponent didn't have a 4th base. So if Maru didn't see that 4th base, he would not be moving out right now like this. Good micro by Maru, as we can expect from him. And we see here this Adept-Stalker army isn't really doing as much damage as Myungsik would like, until the storms land, that is. But still, Bio it scales a lot better than Stalker Adepts do, because Adepts and Stalkers in relatively low numbers, they can out DPS and have strong DPS and strong tankability. But in the later stages of the game, a massive ball of Bio is still a lot more scarier than a massive ball of Adepts and Stalkers at the same supply. This 3 medevac drop is really important for Maru here. What the observer is noting here is that there are a bunch of spotter pylons on the right-hand side of the map to detect drops and other kinds of things coming in. Very smart play by Myungsik, especially because he is using his robotics facility very aggressively, so he's not going to have a lot of observers around to scout for this kind of thing. And this map is also very difficult to place observers so that you can see everything going on. So the reason why this drop is very important is because if we take a look at the minimap right now, we see Myungsik is posturing for an attack at Maru's front. Maru's army is at home to defend, and he has this 3 medevac drop ready to kind of take back map control. So Myungsik sees that Maru has a 3 medevac drop out on the map, and immediately Myungsik's army has to move back. And so we see his army was right there ready to attack Maru, and now we see Myungsik immediately going back to his side of the map and giving up the map control that he had in this area. And this allows Maru to move out from his third base, and we see him going to the fourth base at the same time. The good High Templar flanks from Myungsik ends up saving him this battle, at least, and buying some time for him. And Maru's doing this two-pronged poke is essentially set up with this 3 medevac drop. And this 3 medevac drop is really what ends up winning the game for Maru as well. Just the importance of it. Because now Myungsik's army is completely split up, and the Adepts and Stalkers get even weaker when they're split up against the correct amount of bio when you have like 4 to 6 medevacs worth of units. So we see Maru end up. Oh, and the reason why he drops like this, I should break this down because it's pretty important to know and understand how Maru was able to get a drop into Myungsik's base like this. So initially, Myungsik did have map vision. He had 2 pylons over here. Maru killed one, and he's like, hey, what's up? I'm over here. And now he ends up killing the second one, and that essentially blinds Myungsik in one of his eyes. Like the right side of his head, he's just completely blind now. So this attack's going on at the fourth. Maru ends up backing up outside of Myungsik's third base. So currently right now, Maru has retreated. And although that may be a sign of defeat, what this also gives Maru is the advantage of surprise. So Myungsik no longer knows where Maru's army is. He had pylons there, and now they're gone. So Maru's army is still here. It's in the same spot it was a minute ago, but Myungsik no longer knows that. And so because he no longer knows that, Maru is able to, he scans and he sees that Myungsik's army that is supposed to kind of be defending the right-hand side of the map is no longer in position. He saw the Stalkers moving out of the third, and so he knows that it's safe to drop in here because there's going to be very little defense available, which we do see here. And this fight over here, Maru obviously takes a good engagement. I believe it's because Myungsik only has 1 forge and Maru's on, I believe Maru's on 2-2 right now. Yeah, he's been on 2-2, and Myungsik is only on like 1-1 right now, and that's his +2 going, +2 starting. So the bio is able to trade a lot better with better upgrades against this gateway heavy army, and the game is about to close out right here. Myungsik made a very critical error in taking this engagement over here. There was really no, like, we see on the minimap, Myungsik is moving out to greet Maru's army. I'll rewind that a little bit. So we see this army over here. I believe that's an observer. So as soon as the Maru's army goes over the observer, Myungsik goes out to greet Maru. Now, this kind of move is good against a Liberator heavy army, but against an army with only 2 Liberators, you don't need to stall your opponent because your opponent isn't trying to like leapfrog across with siege units. So we see Myungsik taking the engagement here. First of all, he's only fighting with half of his army. The Blink Stalkers are late to the fight. Second of all, he does not have an army advantage, so he should not be fighting here as well. And third of all, positionally speaking, there's no reason to actually fight here as well. He should have moved back into a more defensive area. He doesn't have a 5th base. There's no reason to keep this area as well or prevent Maru from taking it. There's just really no reason for him to fight here. He's not accomplishing anything, and by fighting at a farther away location, he could have bought himself time for maybe another warp-in round or for more energy for his High Templar or just something else to make the fight ultimately go better his way. Maru's drop hasn't been cleaned up yet because Myungsik did move all of his units back, and I believe all of his warp-ins were also being used to defend the 4th base as well. so he couldn't just warp in units to clean up this drop either. Very good play by Maru, being able to essentially positionally checkmate Myungsik into this kind of a position. And Maru knows he's won because he's fighting in front of the photon overcharge. He doesn't even care that he's fighting in range of it, because he knows he has an overwhelming advantage. Probes are called, and GG is called. GG is called. There we go. And Maru is able to take the game. And yeah, that's pretty much, that's probably as much of an in-depth analysis of this game as you'll get. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and stay tuned. Well, don't have to stay tuned because this is a VOD, but my next VOD will most likely be Innovation versus SOS after I watch it and take notes and make a video of it and upload it. Cheers, guys.